Greetings. I am Dr. Noni Davis coming to you from St. C Academy. And I want you, sometimes I forget to do this, but I should always remember to give thanks to my ancestors and particularly to my father who helped us to start St. C Academy 30 years ago, and my mother who is still with us. Just a nod to her as we all co-founded St. C Academy, and because of her, we are still here. She's one of the major reasons why St. C is still functioning. And so today, I wanted to talk about this UN resolution, and I'm pretty sure a lot of people have heard about it. Um, the UN resolution on slavery to intensify their the resolution was A80L.48, a declaration of the trafficking of enslaved Africans and racialized chattel enslavement of Africans as the gravest crime against humanity. So on March 25th, this week, this resolution was passed by the UN, and it had 123 votes for it. There were 3 no's, which is crazy, and that was America, United States, uh, uh, the uncivilized nation of is not real, and Argentina and the United States, these Zionist nations who are, I didn't even realize. I mean, heard that Argentina was bad, but a lot of the Nazis, these Nazi Zionists went down there. And then, of course, we know Israel is being ridiculous. And the United States, when hasn't it been ridiculous as a nation here? And then, so what does this resolution, who introduced this resolution? It was introduced by the Ghanaian president, John Mahama, and he led the effort to bring this resolution forward. And this was the first, but this resolution was first introduced in the African Union, and which I'm going to read for you later. But first of all, so let's go through the countries that abstained, and you will not be surprised at who said, I'm not going to vote for it or against it. I'm just not going to vote. I'm a vote. I'm indecisive. So it was United Kingdom, Canada. I was not fully surprised because there's some racism in Canada. Australia, Japan. I was a little bit shocked about that. Oman, Fiji, Belgium, Armenia, Bosnia Herzegovina, Bulgaria. Ooh, a lot of European countries. Fiji, I was surprised at Fiji. Like, what? France, Germany, Spain, Netherlands, Albania, Andorra, Austria, Cambodia. I was like, wow. Croatia, Cyprus, Czechia, Denmark, Estonia, Finland, Georgia, Greece, Hungary, Iceland, Ireland, Italy, Latvia, Liechtenstein, Lithuania, Luxembourg, Malta, Monaco, Montenegro, Norway, Poland, Portugal, New Zealand, North Macedonia, Republic of Malosa, and I think that's in America. I was like, what? Okay, somewhere. I didn't know about that, but I'll talk about that more later. Romania, Slovakia, Sweden, Switzerland, Ukraine, San Marino, and Spain. So all of Europe said no. Or abstained. They didn't say no, they abstained. And then you have some countries that didn't even vote at all. And I was like, what is going on? And the countries that did vote on were Afghanistan. There's 3 countries from Asia: Afghanistan, Bhutan, and Syria. 3 African nations: Benin, Madagascar, and Sao Tome. I was very surprised at that. And then you had South America: Bolivia, Ecuador, Paraguay, and Venezuela didn't vote. And then you had from the what is it? The Pacific Islands, you had Kiribati, Nauru, Palau, Solomon Islands, Tonga, and Tuvalu. So I don't really know whether some of these didn't vote because they were under pressure by other countries, but by the U.S., I just don't have any idea. So, and I did not pursue that. But these are the ones that either abstained and the ones that did not vote at all. And so, and they may not have been able to vote because maybe they had to have a certain qualification in order to vote. But like I said, I did not investigate that. So I don't want to make an accusation, but we know why the Europeans didn't vote. But anyway, so the reparations justice encourages dialogue on reparatory justice, including apologies, restitution, and rehabilitation for the enduring legacies of slavery. So that's the gist of it. And so I wanted to go over here because, like I said, the African Union were the first people to introduce this. Okay, so this particular union happened in Ethiopia, and so you can pull this up online. It's called the African Union um, Assembly of the Union, and these are the notes from that meeting that took place February 14th to the 15th. So this was last month when they drafted this resolution, and so I wanted to go to not number one. Okay, recalling decision of February 2024. So they started on this in February 2024 on building a united front to advance the cause of justice and the payment of reparations to Africans. So that was number one. And then, the next one was the same thing. What they did in the theme of the year 2025, which was justice for Africans and people of African descent through reparations. So they've been working on this for a whole minute. And then, let's see, concept note of the theme of the year 2025, justice for Africans and people of African descent through reparations. And this one was let's see, the next one was express his gratitude and high appreciation to H.E. John Dramani Mohammed, President of the Republic of Ghana, for his invaluable contribution and custodian as the African Union leader on advancing the cause of justice and payment of reparations to Africans in conformity with decision assembly. And so then they approved it, and then they had the endorsement. And so I'm trying to think, and then they adopted it. So that's number 14. The adopts the Addis Ababa Declaration Annex on Transcontinental Partnership in Pursuit of Reparatory Justice for Africans and People of African Descent through reparations, which details reference points, key issues, outputs, as well as instruments and mechanisms, partnerships, including follow-up mechanisms for advancing the joint pursuit of reparatory justice for Africans and people of African descent. So Africa is like, y'all gonna give me my money. Endorses the extension of the theme of the year to a 2026 to 2035 decade of justice. So they're going to spend the next 10 years working on this reparation. Encourages all member states to further integrate the continental agenda of justice and reparations during the decade 2026 to 2035 into their national policies, into their educational, cultural, and diplomatic frameworks as a central element of Pan-Africanism and Agenda 2063. Number 19, urges member states in furtherance of ongoing efforts to elicit global support for the African Union's quest for justice for Africans and people of African descent through reparations, to fully support the initiative of the AU champion for reparations to table a draft resolution at the United Nations General Assembly calling for the recognition of transatlantic slave trade as the gravest crime against humanity in accordance with the decision assembly, and then it's got all these numbers and everything. The necessary for financial and human resources to be made available to the full implementation of the Assembly's mandated task and required outcomes related to the theme of the decade, and directs the Commission to present a report detailing the required additional resources at the nearest upcoming budget review meetings for consideration. So, I'm coughing because this was really deep. So, why did Europeans and other countries abstain from voting? So, of course, we know they don't want to give us our money. No, we're not paying y'all. So, the rejection of reparations, because it happened so far back in the past without even considering that they're saying that this was a continued, let me turn if I see that statement. It was a continued. They're saying it was a crime because against humanity, because it continued. It did not just stop when in 1865. It continued, and it continued everywhere there were Africans. And then you have colonization. So we have still been under the system of slavery, even though, we did Jim Crow. And so these people are like, well, it happened so far back in the past. And so the resolution states that it started in the past and continues today. Now, they said, oh, y'all gonna love this one. It wasn't illegal to enslave people. There were no laws. So when we enslaved your ancestors, there were no laws saying that we couldn't enslave your ancestors. Now, I said, y'all have lost your mind. You had a whole Bible that said, love your neighbor as you love yourself. You had a whole Bible, and a lot of this stuff y'all rewrote, because some of the stuff about slavery and master, that's some stuff that y'all put in there, especially when you were trying to manage those serfs. When you were trying to control, when you stole the land from the indigenous people of Europe, and conquered each other, conquered the Irish, knocked out the Scottish, and started all these wars, and then you took their lands and created serfdom so that they didn't have anything. So you started that with your own people. And so just imagine, you have no morality, and you're going to try to pull that one on us. Then the next one was, this offense should not be placed on a hierarchy above Holocaust or genocide. I was like, the slave trade, the European slave trade, the Ma'afa was a great disaster. They said out of the 12.5 million people were taken, and only a third of them survived. What are you talking about? And so that was a genocide. And it was a Holocaust, because in Africa, when you cause all kinds of wars on the continent to get these Africans, when people were trying to say, no, you can't take my people, you were wiping out villages. And then you had people who were fighting the Europeans, and the Europeans were killing people. So you created all of you agitated some of the negative interactions that people already had, or what do they call it? Not competitions, but the grievances people already had between each other, and you escalated that and turned it into wars between them. And you said they fight, and we get the slaves, and you had that was your whole plan. And so a lot of people were killed on the continent who never even made it into the slave trade. And so you cause an extermination of communities by doing this. And so that's a Holocaust. And we don't want to talk about what happened in Namibia. Lord have mercy, by the Germans. They killed millions of people. Millions of people were killed. So it's not putting it above. This slavery was a combination of a Holocaust and a genocide and enslavement. It was all three of them things going on together, whatever. They said it's highly problematic. It said it lacked sound legal basis. Black people, trying to say that that was incoherent. They didn't articulate their arguments very well. We have heard that before. I don't understand why black people are so violent. Well, you beat us, you hit us, and so we hit you back. But why did you hit us back? You know, I'm white, so I should not be hit back. If I say something to you, you're supposed to just accept what I said to you. Okay. Uh, we're not able to articulate our argument. How about you don't want to listen? And you don't want to hear it. And it's because it was perfectly articulated. Mr. That the president of Muhammad, what's his name? Yeah, President Muhammad was extremely. These people have been educated in y'all schools. He spoke perfect English and probably said words that some of y'all don't even know. So that was the most ignorant, all ridiculous statement. And then they said it was one-sided, divided, divisive because it expands over too long a historical period and of 400 years. And then it also doesn't consider both sides. What is the other side? What is the other side? I don't know what the other side could possibly be. I don't know what they mean, but anyway, they said that this argument was one sided because we need to hear what I guess they want to say. Well, Africans participate in the slave trade too, um, and we know yes, Africans did have enslavement, but they didn't have chattel slavery, and so for all of those of I mean, ADOS people and foundational Black Americans, just hear me. Um, Africans throughout the continent, and I'm not trying to exonerate anybody because I'm not going to say slavery was great, but slavery was mostly folks who were enslaved in the continent during that time were mostly people who had uh, uh, who were criminals or who had they were prisoners of war and they had attacked this village. Then uh, most of them were also people who owed a debt. Now, you were not enslaved for your whole life. You were not worked to death and people were sitting on the porch watching you. You worked side by side, your owner. You could also marry into the family or you could become a chief in the family or some kind of leader in the family. Um, you were grafted in. Your children, your grandchildren, your great grandchildren, your great great grandchildren would not be enslaved. No. So it was not chattel slavery that based on the color of your skin and all your descendants would be enslaved. Mm-mm. People could be released from their enslavement once they completed their service. So when they're saying slavery in Africa, it's not the same thing. And were there crazy people in Africa? Absolutely, because we have MAGA. We have Black MAGA in America. And we have Black MAGA who will defend Trump to their blue in the face. Well, all he could say anything, and they don't always justify or support him in that foolishness. While at the same time, the United States voted no that slavery wasn't proper, and some of them probably think it's fine. They probably agree with him, and so we have neocolonialism. Yeah, they don't want to deal with that. Yeah, we have I mean, yeah. So I guess neocolonialism. They're going to try to say that that is not an extension of the slavery. But if you come to my country and you impose a system where I cannot have access to my land, I cannot have access. You control my produce, what I produce. You can extract um, all the resources from my land. You can force me off my land and take the diamonds, take the gold, take the coltan, take everything out of the aluminum, all of this stuff out of the soil, lithium, whatever, to make your batteries and to make your phones and your technology and your computers and all this stuff that we're using right now to function. Uh, you have you've extracted the resources. You created apartheid systems where you're in control and you get to, like I said, you're the one that's governing everybody else, and you can create laws on a dime to control African people. And then you did that in the Caribbean, you did it in the Americas, you did it on a continent. So it's just great. It's insane. And what other argument did they have? Um, this. Oh, the this these European nations have gained all their wealth off of their colonies. So not only did they destroy, um, maintain this system of segregation and apartheid in America, but they divided Europe. Europe divided Africa up in the 1900s. You have this place, you have this part. England, you can take Nigeria, you can take Ghana. What else speaks English? All Kenya and all of that. And then Germany, you can take Namibia, you can take Upper Volta, you can and these people, and then France can come here and take Guinea, you can take uh, Senegal, you can take Cote d'Ivoire, and all of this stuff. And then you named all these places. These people, that wasn't their name. So you renamed them. You renamed these countries. And some of these people are renaming themselves again and changing their names back to some of their original names. Like, you have Burkina Faso, and you also have Eswatini. So some of them have reclaimed the names of their country. Sierra Leone is Portuguese. That's not an African name. Nigeria is completely made up. So a lot of the countries, Ethiopia, I know it was Axum, and it was Kush, and Egypt was Kemet, and what is it? Sudan was Nubia. So you have taken these countries and divided them all up, and created some crazy situations. You divided. You have Ghanaians who are, or people who are the Fanti people. They're Fanti people who live in Ghana, and they're Fanti people, I think, who live in Ivory Coast. And so they're across they became Ghanaians, and they became Ivory people of Cote d'Ivoire, but Ivorians, but they're the same people. So you also divided ethnic groups, and put you when you finally left, Europe left these divisions where we're like, well, we like the we like the Igbo more than we like the Yoruba, or we like the Yoruba more than we like the Igbo, so we'll leave the Yoruba in charge and let the Yoruba run the whole country. But you got Igbo, you got all of these nations in this new bordered country, Nigeria, and now you've created more hostilities between them, and that's what's going on everywhere in Sierra Leone. Is the Mende against the Temne, against the you got Creole in there, because you got a lot of folks who were mixed race or came from United States, Sierra Leone, and Liberia. So you created all of these divisions and confusion and chaos in the midst of these countries, because you divided it up in these stupid ways without any consideration for their cultural identity and their spiritual practices, some of their natural alliances versus their enemies. These folks had enemies, and so what are we doing? It's insane that this country would that Europeans would try to abstain or from this conversation and say that it was not legitimate in some way, when they know that even now, without bauxite, you'd have no roads. Europe would have no roads. Without access to the oil, you would not have any electricity in your country. You have pipelines from Africa to France to make sure you have gasoline, and then these people don't get any. You've Europe has extracted diamonds and benefited from the diamonds and paying people nickels and dimes to extract the diamonds, and then you sell it for $1 million or whatever. So it's like crazy how how the people, um, how these European countries stood and made these proclamations that of why they abstain, and they want the language to change. And you know what? Y'all can go away from here. Get Just go away from here, because it passed. 123 brown countries came together. You didn't hear me say nothing about Iran and Iraq. They voted for it. You didn't hear me say nothing about Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia voted for it. You didn't hear me say who else? You didn't hear me say what? Um uh Pakistan. You didn't hear me say nothing about India. They voted. They voted. They voted for with this um reparations, this bill, this that it was the gravest. Everybody has agreed that this was the gravest crime against humanity. This was the gravest crime against humanity. Everybody else agrees, and so give thanks. These 53 people who abstained, these three people who said no, including our United States of America, and then these other ones who did not vote, which I plan to find out why they didn't vote. Um, they did not win. We got 123 countries to support, and they have approved it. Now, what does this do? It lays the groundwork for us to get our money. And so uh, these folks, what they gonna do? Nobody cares. I don't care what Europe tries to do. It passed. We are the global. They're gonna have to deal with the global majority finally, and how they feel about it doesn't matter. What is also interesting about this whole thing is that they had another resolution. What was it called? Uh, did I write it down? It was a resolution for women. They had um, the UN resolution for women. I had pulled that up too, and America voted against that too. UN resolution for women, 2026. And so this one is CSW 70, and I'll show you that one, the number right here. US CSW 70. And this one is the priority theme: ensuring and strengthening access to justice for all women and girls, including by promoting inclusive and equitable legal systems, eliminating discriminatory laws, policies, and practices, and addressing structural barriers. America was the only one that said no. The only country that said no. I think that I'm trying to think images of it. Yeah, here it is. These are the countries. So the countries that agreed were Algeria, Bangladesh, Belgium, Belize, Bolivia, Brazil, Cabo Verde, Chile, China, Colombia, Costa Rica, Cuba, Czechia, whatever. The ones that said abstain were, I'll just do that, Cote d'Ivoire abstained, Democratic Republic of Congo abstained, Egypt abstained, Mali, Mauritania, and Saudi Arabia. I don't know what is going on with them. So that's the draft, the voting draft. So in this situation, it was mostly African nations that rejected that, and I'm pretty sure it might have something to do with Islam. But the United States said no. And so this has been a roller coaster week. It was a roller coaster week of decisions. And so women and African Americans, we're gonna have to fight. But it looks like they still passed it. So 37-1. We're on a roll. The world is changing. Women are going to be fine. African Americans are going to be fine. And we just give thanks for that. Ashe. Peace.
If you're talking, they will hear you.
We all want our kids to grow up safe and healthy, so we show them how. And we tell them with honest conversations that let them know what we expect. Not just one time, but every chance we get. That's especially important when it comes to alcohol and other drugs. Kids not only need to know the dangers and how to avoid them, they need to hear it often from you. And when it comes to pain medications, opioids, they need to know that they should never be taken without a prescription and never shared with friends or family. It's dangerous and illegal. So talk with your kids and guide them through the challenges of growing up safe and healthy. Because when you talk, they hear you. For more information about talking with your kids about underage use of alcohol and other drugs, visit underagedrinking.samhsa.gov.
So talk, they hear you. You can do it if you try.
I'm a St. Cia student. Of course I walk into the sound of drums.
I'm a St. Cia student. Of course I know my mother.
I'm a St. Cia student. Of course I can play the drum.
I'm a St. Cia student. Of course I can work with my hands.
I'm a St. Cia student.